I stared at Lucas in disbelief, his words a knife twisting in my gut. You want a divorce? Because of her? I gestured towards the young woman beside him, her cold eyes appraising me with disdain. Lucas shrugged nonchalantly. Emily understands me better than you ever did. She's not some washed-up housewife living in the past. My throat constricted as I fought back tears. How could the man I'd loved, the one I sacrificed so much for, treat me this way? But, after everything we've been through together... Oh, spare me the waterworks, he sneered. You knew this was coming. We've been over for years. He held out the divorce papers, his lips curling into a smirk. Just sign, and we can make this quick and painless. Numb, I reached for the papers with a trembling hand. A part of me wanted to fight, to scream and rage against this injustice, but the rest of me felt utterly defeated, crushed by the weight of his callous betrayal. As my shaky signature marked the end of our marriage, Lucas snatched the papers back, his eyes already dismissing me. There, that wasn't so hard, was it? Emily and I will take the house, of course. You can keep whatever scraps you want. I flinched at his cruelty, memories of happier times flickering through my mind like a cruel taunt. How had we fallen so far? Later that night, I packed what little I could into a battered suitcase, tears streaming down my face. This house, which I had poured my heart and soul into making a home, now felt like a hollow shell, devoid of warmth or love. As I dragged my belongings to the door, I caught a glimpse of the faded family photo on the wall. A happier time when Lucas's smile had been genuine, and his eyes held nothing but adoration for me. A bitter pang of loss twisted in my chest. I was truly alone now, cast aside like worthless trash. The harsh reality of my situation hit me like a physical blow, and I sank to the floor, overcome by the overwhelming sense of despair and betrayal. The days that followed passed in a blur of misery. I found myself in a dingy one-bedroom apartment, the bare walls and stained carpets a far cry from the comfortable home I'd known. Each night I lay awake, haunted by the memory of Lucas's cruel words and the sting of his betrayal. Survival became a daily struggle. With no job and a rapidly dwindling savings, I was forced to take on whatever menial work I could find, waitressing, cleaning houses, anything to keep a roof over my head. The indignity of it all was a bitter pill to swallow, but I had no choice but to endure. One evening, as I dragged my weary body to the laundromat, a kind-eyed elderly man offered me a warm smile. Rough day? I managed a weak nod, too exhausted to muster a response. I'm Walter, he said, his voice gentle. You look like you could use a friend. Normally, I would have brushed off such an overture, but something about Walter's genuine concern broke through the shell I'd built around myself. Before I knew it, I found myself pouring out the sordid tale of Lucas's betrayal, the words tumbling out in a torrent of pent-up anguish. To my surprise, Walter listened with patient understanding, his kind eyes reflecting a depth of empathy that touched my soul. That scoundrel doesn't deserve a woman like you, he said, his voice tinged with righteous indignation. In that moment, I felt a flicker of something I hadn't experienced in far too long. Hope. Perhaps I wasn't as alone in this world as I'd thought. Over the following weeks, Walter became a constant presence in my life, offering a listening ear and a shoulder to lean on. Bit by bit, I found myself opening up to him, drawn to his gentle wisdom and unwavering kindness. One day, as we shared a cup of coffee in his immaculate suburban home, Walter revealed a startling truth. You know, I knew your mother many years ago, he said wistfully. We were very close, once upon a time. My breath caught in my throat as he regaled me with tales of my mother's vivacious spirit and unwavering strength, painting a picture of a woman I'd never truly known. With each anecdote, I felt a newfound connection to my roots, a sense of belonging I'd been desperately craving. As Walter's story unfolded, an even more shocking revelation came to light. He was my estranged father, torn from my mother's life by the cruel whims of fate. Tears stung my eyes as he expressed his deep regret for missing out on so many precious years, his voice thick with emotion. In that moment, I realized that Walter was more than just a kind stranger. He was a lifeline, a beacon of hope in the darkest of storms. And as I gazed into his eyes, so much like my own, I knew that together we could weather any tempest that lay ahead. Walter's revelation hit me like a ton of bricks. My estranged father, The man I'd longed for my entire life had been right here all along. A flurry of emotions swirled within me: joy, anger, disbelief. But above all else, a profound sense of relief washed over me. I wasn't alone in this world after all. "Why didn't you try to find me?" I asked, my voice trembling with a mix of hurt and hope. Walter's eyes were heavy with remorse. "I did try, for years, but your mother, she made it clear she wanted a clean break. I respected her wishes, even though it broke my heart." I nodded slowly, understanding dawning. My mother had been fiercely independent, determined to make it on her own after the heartbreak of my father leaving. Still, a part of me wished he'd tried harder. As if sensing my inner turmoil, Walter reached out and gave my hand a gentle squeeze. "I know I can never make up for the lost time, but I'd like to try, if you'll have me." In that moment, I made a decision, one that would change the course of my life forever. "I'd like that," I said, my voice thick with emotion. The next few weeks passed in a whirlwind as I moved into Walter's warm, inviting home. For the first time in longer than I could remember, I felt a sense of belonging, of being truly cared for. Walter doted on me like a doting father, his kindness and compassion a soothing balm for my wounded soul. Yet even as I slowly began to heal, the specter of Lucas's betrayal lingered like a dark cloud, casting a pall over my newfound happiness. Try as I might, I couldn't shake the bitter sting of his cruelty, the way he'd so callously discarded me for that young, vapid woman. One evening, as Walter and I shared a comfortable silence in his cozy living room, he fixed me with a penetrating gaze. "You know, I used to be a private investigator," he said, his voice taking on a conspiratorial tone. My interest piqued. I leaned forward, hanging on his every word. "If you wanted, I could look into this Lucas fellow," he offered. "See if there's more to his story than meets the eye." A spark of determination flickered within me. Could this be my chance to finally uncover the truth, to expose Lucas for the lying snake he was? I squared my shoulders, meeting Walter's gaze with steely resolve. "Do it," I said, my voice laced with conviction. "I want to know everything." From that moment on, Walter became my ally, my co-conspirator in uncovering the sordid depths of Lucas's deception. Together, we pored over records, followed leads, and slowly but surely, a shocking picture began to emerge. It turned out that Lucas's infidelity was just the tip of the iceberg. He'd been embezzling funds from his company for years, using the ill-gotten gains to finance his lavish lifestyle and fund his trysts with Emily. That vapid woman wasn't just his mistress. She was his partner in crime, leeching off his stolen wealth like a parasite. As the evidence mounted, a newfound sense of purpose coursed through my veins. This wasn't just about revenge anymore. It was about justice, about exposing the truth and watching their carefully constructed facade come crumbling down around them. With Walter by my side, I knew I had the strength to face down my demons and reclaim the life that had been so callously torn from me. The battle lines were drawn, and I was ready for war. With the truth about Lucas's misdeeds laid bare before me, a newfound sense of purpose took root within my soul. No longer was I the meek, downtrodden woman he had so callously discarded. I was a woman reborn, fueled by a righteous fury that burned brighter with each damning revelation. Walter's private investigation firm became my second home, a hub of activity where we plotted and strategized, determined to bring Lucas's house of lies crashing down around him. Day after day, I immersed myself in the work, poring over financial records and piecing together the intricate web of deceit he had spun. With each new piece of evidence we uncovered, I felt my confidence growing, the shackles of self-doubt that had once bound me falling away. I was no longer the naive, trusting wife blinded by love. I was a force to be reckoned with, armed with the truth and an unwavering resolve to see justice served. "You're a natural at this," Walter would often remark, a hint of pride in his voice, as he watched me methodically dissect the case files. "Like you were born for it." And indeed, I found myself thriving in this new environment, my analytical mind reveling in the challenge of unraveling the tangled threads of Lucas's misdeeds. It was as if a part of me that had lain dormant for years was finally awakening, stretching its wings and embracing the thrill of the hunt. Yet, even as we built an ironclad case against Lucas and his co-conspirator Emily, a part of me hesitated, torn between the burning desire for vengeance and the lingering embers of the love I had once felt for him. "What do you plan to do with all this?" Walter asked one evening, his steady gaze fixed on me. I faltered, the weight of the decision bearing down on me like a physical force. I don't know," I admitted, my voice wavering. "Part of me wants to see them pay for what they've done, to watch their lives crumble the way they destroyed mine. But another part—" Walter nodded in understanding, his eyes kind yet resolute. "Whatever path you choose, I'll stand by you. But remember, Jennifer, this is about more than just revenge. It's about reclaiming your life, your dignity, and ensuring they can never hurt anyone else the way they've hurt you." His words resonated deep within me, stoking the embers of my determination. He was right. This wasn't just about settling a personal score. It was about righting a wrong, about exposing the truth, and ensuring that the scales of justice were balanced once more. With a renewed sense of purpose, I squared my shoulders and met Walter's gaze head-on. "You're right," I said, my voice steady and unwavering. "It's time to bring them down, once and for all." From that moment on, I attacked the case with a singular focus, meticulously gathering every shred of evidence, every damning detail that would seal Lucas and Emily's fate. I was no longer the victim. I was the hunter, and they were my prey. And when the time came to strike, I would be ready, armed with the truth and an unshakable resolve to see justice served, no matter the cost. As the weeks ticked by, our case against Lucas and Emily grew stronger by the day. With each new piece of evidence we uncovered, the web of lies they had spun became more tangled, more inescapable. Yet, even as we closed in on our quarry, a part of me remained guarded, wary of allowing myself to hope for true vindication. It was during this time that I met Peter, a sharp-eyed lawyer who had been brought in to consult on the legal aspects of our case. From the moment we shook hands, I felt an instant connection, a spark of understanding that went beyond mere professional courtesy. "You've been through hell," he remarked one day, his piercing gaze seeming to see straight through to my very soul. "But you're not letting it break you. That takes real strength." His words resonated within me, stirring something long dormant, a flicker of attraction, of hope for a future beyond the all-consuming quest for justice that had consumed my every waking thought. As we worked side by side, poring over legal documents and strategizing our next moves, I found myself drawn to Peter's unwavering confidence, his steadfast belief in the power of truth and accountability. He was a kindred spirit, a man who understood the weight of what we were undertaking and welcomed the challenge with open arms. "We're going to nail these bastards," he would say, his jaw set in determination. "They'll wish they never crossed paths with us." And as the days turned to weeks, that shared sense of purpose blossomed into something deeper, something that brought a warmth to my heart I hadn't felt in far too long. Peter became my rock, my anchor in the storm of emotions that threatened to overwhelm me as the endgame drew near. Finally, the day arrived, the moment we had been building towards, the reckoning that would either see justice served or leave us adrift in the wreckage of our failed crusade. With trembling hands, I donned my armor, a crisp suit that lent me an air of authority, a mask of steely resolve to hide the maelstrom of nerves churning within. Peter met my gaze, his eyes shining with a mixture of pride and resolve. "You've got this," he murmured, giving my hand a reassuring squeeze. "It's time to make them pay." And so we marched into battle, our heads held high, armed with the truth and an unshakable belief in the power of justice. As we confronted Lucas and Emily with the damning evidence of their misdeeds, I watched their carefully constructed facades crumble, their lies exposed for all to see. The looks on their faces, a potent mixture of shock, fear, and desperate denial, will be forever seared into my memory. In that moment, I realized that true vengeance wasn't about inflicting pain or seeking retribution. It was about reclaiming my dignity, my self-worth, and ensuring that these two toxic individuals could never victimize another soul. As the legal proceedings unfolded, as Lucas and Emily were stripped of their ill-gotten wealth and faced the prospect of prison time, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders, the weight of anger, of bitterness, of the all-consuming need for revenge that had driven me for so long. And when it was all said and done, when the dust had settled and the battle was won, I turned to Peter with a sense of overwhelming gratitude. Without him, Without his unwavering support and belief in me, I might have faltered, might have lost my way in the darkness. But now, as I gazed into his eyes, I saw not just a trusted ally, but the promise of a future where I could finally leave the past behind and embrace the possibilities that lay ahead. The day of reckoning had finally arrived. With Peter by my side, we strode into Lucas's office, our footsteps echoing like a death knell. He looked up, his face contorting into a sneer when he saw me. "Well, if it isn't the bitter ex-wife," he sneered. "Come to beg for scraps?" I met his gaze unflinchingly, my resolve fortified by months of meticulous preparation. "Actually, Lucas, we're here to end your little charade once and for all." Peter stepped forward, a thick file in his hands. "We have all the evidence we need to prove your embezzlement scheme. The jig is up." Lucas's smug expression faltered, his eyes darting nervously between us. "Embezzlement? That's absurd. I'm a respected businessman." "Save it," I spat. "We know everything, the offshore accounts, the kickbacks, all of it. And we have proof that Emily was in on the whole thing." As if on cue, Emily sidled into the room, her face pale. "Lucas, what is she talking about?" He turned on her, his eyes wild. "You said you covered our tracks. You useless little—" "Enough." Peter's voice cracked like a whip, silencing them both. "The evidence speaks for itself. Unless you want to add obstruction to the charges, I suggest you start talking." For a long, tense moment, silence reigned. Then, like a deflating balloon, Lucas slumped in his chair, all bravado fled. All right, you got me." I watched, numb, as he laid it all out. The years of skimming funds, the lies, the despicable way he had used and manipulated Emily. Each sordid revelation was like a twist of the knife, but I remained steadfast, drinking in his downfall with a sense of grim satisfaction. Emily, for her part, quickly turned on him, her self-preservation instinct kicking in. "He made me do it," she wailed. "He said if I didn't help, he'd ruin me." Lucas sneered. "Don't play the victim now, you little—" "That's enough," Peter cut him off. "We have all we need. The authorities are already on their way." As if on cue, the door burst open, and a team of stern-faced officers flooded in. I watched, numb, as they slapped handcuffs on Lucas and Emily, their protestations falling on deaf ears. In that moment, as they were led away in disgrace, I felt a profound sense of vindication wash over me. The facade had finally crumbled, the lies exposed for all to see. And I, the woman they had so callously discarded, had been the architect of their downfall. In the days and weeks that followed, the legal proceedings unfolded like a well-oiled machine. Lucas and Emily's empire crumbled, their ill-gotten wealth seized, their reputations in tatters. And through it all, I remained a silent observer, drinking in their suffering with a sense of grim satisfaction. Yet, even as I savored their comeuppance, a part of me felt hollow. The all-consuming drive for revenge that had fueled me for so long had been sated, leaving an emptiness in its wake. It was Peter who helped me find my way back, his steady presence and unwavering support a lifeline in those dark moments. "You did the right thing," he would remind me, his eyes shining with pride. "They got what they deserved, but you're so much more than this." Slowly, painfully, I began to rebuild the pieces of my shattered life, shedding the anger and bitterness that had weighed me down for far too long. With Peter by my side, I found the strength to look towards the future, to embrace the possibilities that lay ahead. And as the dust settled, as Lucas and Emily faded into distant memories, I realized that true victory wasn't about watching them suffer. It was about reclaiming my own power, my own sense of self-worth. They had tried to break me, to strip me of everything that made me whole. But in the end, I had risen from the ashes, stronger and more resilient than ever before. And that, more than any punishment they could face, was the greatest victory of all. The courtroom was abuzz with hushed whispers and sidelong glances as Lucas and Emily were led in, their once immaculate appearances now disheveled and unkempt. As they took their seats, Lucas shot me a venomous glare, his eyes burning with impotent rage. I met his gaze unflinchingly, my spine ramrod straight. This was it, the moment I had been waiting for, the final reckoning for their misdeeds. The trial unfolded like a slow-motion train wreck, each witness and piece of evidence further exposing the sordid depths of their betrayal. I watched, my heart pounding, as the prosecution methodically dismantled their flimsy defense, presenting an overwhelming case that left no room for doubt. When it was my turn to take the stand, I felt a surge of adrenaline course through my veins. This was my chance to confront them, to lay bare the pain and anguish they had inflicted upon me. "Miss Warner," the prosecutor began, his voice measured and calm, "in your own words, please describe the events leading up to your discovery of the embezzlement scheme." I took a deep breath, my gaze flickering to where Lucas and Emily sat, their faces twisted into matching sneers of contempt. "It started with the lies," I began, my voice steady and unwavering. The late nights at the office, the sudden influx of cash that Lucas couldn't quite explain away. As I spoke, recounting the gut-wrenching moments when the truth had begun to unravel, I saw Emily shift uncomfortably in her seat, her bravado faltering. And then there was Emily. I continued, turning my attention to the woman who had so willingly participated in my destruction. The young, vapid thing he had taken as his mistress, his partner in crime. Lucas opened his mouth, no doubt to spew forth some vile retort, but the judge silenced him with a stern glare. "They thought they could just discard me, like I was nothing," I said, my voice trembling with barely contained emotion. "They took everything from me. My home, my dignity, my sense of self-worth. And for what? Greed? Lust? A pathetic attempt to recapture their youth?" The words poured forth like a torrent, each one lancing the fetid boil of anger and betrayal that had festered within me for so long. I laid it all bare. The sleepless nights, the soul-crushing loneliness, the utter despair of having the one person I trusted most violate that trust in the most cruel and callous way imaginable. By the time I finished, there was not a dry eye in the courtroom. Even the judge, a weathered veteran of countless trials, seemed visibly shaken by the rawness of my testimony. As for Lucas and Emily, their smug facades had crumbled, replaced by pallid masks of fear and realization. They knew, in that moment, that they had lost, that the web of lies they had so carefully constructed was unraveling before their very eyes. The verdict, when it came, was swift and decisive, guilty on all counts. Lucas and Emily were led away in chains, their futures reduced to a fleeting glimpse of freedom before the cold, unforgiving walls of a prison cell. In the aftermath, as the courtroom emptied and the buzz of activity faded, I found myself enveloped in Peter's warm embrace, his eyes shining with a mixture of pride and relief. "You did it," he murmured, brushing a stray tear from my cheek. "You faced them down and won." And in that moment, as the weight of everything I had endured finally lifted from my shoulders, I realized that he was right. I had won, not just the battle against Lucas and Emily, but the war against the demons that had threatened to consume me. With Peter by my side, I knew that the future was bright, filled with endless possibilities, and the promise of a life lived on my own terms. The road ahead would not be easy, but for the first time in what felt like an eternity, I felt truly free. As we left the courthouse, hand in hand, I couldn't help but steal one last glance at Lucas and Emily, their once smug countenances now twisted into masks of dejection and defeat. They had tried to break me, to strip me of everything that made me whole, but in the end, their cruelty had only served to forge me into something stronger, something unbreakable. And as the courthouse doors swung shut behind us, I knew that I had finally closed the book on that dark chapter of my life, ready to embrace the future with open arms and an unshakable resolve to never let anyone hold that kind of power over me again. In the aftermath of Lucas and Emily's downfall, a newfound sense of purpose took root within me. No longer was I the broken, downtrodden woman they had sought to destroy. I was a phoenix, reborn from the ashes of their betrayal, stronger and more resilient than ever before. With Peter by my side, I threw myself into the work at Walter's private investigation firm, relishing the thrill of uncovering the truth and righting wrongs. Each case we took on was a chance to make a difference, to ensure that justice prevailed, no matter how tangled the web of lies. "You're a natural at this," Peter would often remark, his eyes shining with admiration as I deftly unraveled the most complex of mysteries. "It's like you were born for it." And he was right. In the world of private investigation, I had found my true calling, a path that allowed me to channel the hard-won lessons of my past into something meaningful and purposeful. As the months rolled by, Walter watched my transformation with a mixture of pride and awe, his fatherly affection shining through in every interaction. "You've come so far, my dear," he would say, his eyes misty with emotion. "Your mother would be so proud." His words were a balm to the lingering wounds within me, a reminder that even in my darkest moments, I had never been truly alone. Walter had been my rock, my steadfast ally in the fight against Lucas and Emily's villainy, and now he was my mentor, guiding me towards a future brighter than I could have ever imagined. Together we tackled case after case, our reputation for uncompromising integrity and dogged determination spreading like wildfire through the city. From missing persons to corporate espionage, no mystery was too complex, no challenge too daunting for our tight-knit team. And through it all, Peter remained my anchor, his unwavering love and support a constant source of strength and inspiration. "You're a force to be reckoned with," he would whisper in the quiet moments, his arms wrapped around me in a tender embrace. "Nothing can stop you now." As the years passed, our bond only grew stronger, our shared understanding and respect blossoming into a love deeper than I had ever known. And when Peter finally dropped to one knee, a simple diamond ring glittering in his palm, I knew that my journey had come full circle, from the depths of despair to the heights of pure, unbridled joy. "Yes," I breathed, tears of happiness streaking my cheeks as he slipped the ring onto my finger. 1,000 times, yes. In that moment, as our lips met in a searing kiss, I knew that I had finally left the ghost of Lucas and Emily behind for good. They were mere footnotes in the grand tapestry of my life, footnotes that had ultimately shaped me into the woman I was always meant to become. And as Peter and I embarked on our new life together, hand in hand and hearts overflowing with love, I couldn't help but feel a profound sense of gratitude. Gratitude for the trials that had forged me into someone unbreakable. Gratitude for the people who had stood by me through it all. And gratitude for the future that stretched out before us, ripe with endless possibilities. Walter's retirement shortly after our wedding only solidified my path, as he passed the reins of the firm to me with a knowing smile and a hearty embrace. "It's all yours now, my dear," he murmured, his eyes shining with pride. "Go out there and show the world what you're made of." And as I stood at the helm of the firm that had become my second home, surrounded by the steadfast team that had become my family, I knew that Walter's words rang true. The road ahead was paved with challenges, but I was ready to face whatever life threw my way, to fight for justice and truth with every fiber of my being. Because in the end, that was my true victory. Not the downfall of Lucas and Emily, but the realization that I was so much more than they had ever given me credit for. I was a survivor, a warrior, a woman who had stared into the abyss and emerged stronger, wiser, and more determined than ever before. And as I looked out over the city that had been the battleground for so many hard-fought battles, I knew that my journey was just beginning. The future was an open book, waiting to be written, and I was holding the pen.